Hey, I'm Hank, and welcome back to the Clueless Game Dev channel. Hunter here says he wants to show you something new and interesting. What is that? A new intro, you say? Wow, alright. Well, let's roll that new intro. Alright, so we still have work to do, but on with the video.
Hey, what happened?
Okay, so before we get to doing any coding in this video, I think we should take some time and do something I should have done 7-8 months ago before I even wrote any code, and that is create a plan or a little design document.
So what's the plan? Plan? There ain't no plan!
Basically, it's just going to outline what kind of game we're making, for one thing, what we want from the game, so I guess our goals for the game engine, what we need it to do, and what kind of gameplay and story that we want to tell. All right, so the title of their game. So I've already had a little brainstorm session, and I've come up with a kind of a very thinly veiled story at this point. But the title of the game it's going to be called The Companion. And I'll get to the reasons why that's the name of it in a minute here. But so let's see. The game engine that we're going to use is obviously our own, but the name of our game engine is called the Sapphire Engine. And the reason it's called the Sapphire Engine is just because it sounds cool, or at least I thought it did. I came up with the name years ago when I was working on the previous iteration of this project, and I like the idea of using different gems as, naming devices. So I'm going to stick with that because I kind of like the sound of it. And also sapphire is a cool color. So let's write that in. Sapphire Engine. And our game genre is it's going to be action RPG. So the story that I had brainstormed very briefly, the kind of like the one-line pitch would be, okay, let's take it again. It's a game about finding and rescuing a companion. Let's take it again. I'm very bad at pitching things. So the quick and that's kind of like the very short kind of outline for the story. No, that's not good.
Today, Junior?
Sometimes you just need to write it out before you say it to camera. Let me just read the story synopsis I just wrote. While searching for your lost family, you stumble across a small cat in peril. And in this case, cat could be dog or any kind of animal, but for now, it's going to be a cat. You rescue the animal from certain death and form a strange and strong attachment. With your new companion at your side, you travel the world trying to piece together what happened to your family and where they went. So it's a journey just to discover where your family is and where you are or who you are, and basically what happened to them. And it's a mystery that unfolds in chapters. So you can see why it's called The Companion. So you have this little animal that's always at your side. I'm not sure how far I want to go into how much the companion or how much your little animal plays in the story, and if it's just there for story stuff or if it's actually like gameplay related. But for now, we're going to go with that. All right, so let's go with our game features. So already I'm thinking of how big this game is going to be or how small it's going to be, and what the scope of the game is going to be. Since it's just me doing this and I don't really have any support doing it, I don't want to make the scope too big, because if I make it too big, I'm probably never going to finish it. You want to be able to at least manage yourself so that you can create something that's like actually doable. I mean, I'm not going to be creating the next Halo, on my own here. So I want to keep it reasonable. And so when I'm thinking about features I want to add to the game and to the engine, I also have to keep that in mind. And going off the story, the story might be a little bit ambitious, but for now I'm just going to leave it as is, just as kind of a working thing that we can use. So game features. So what do we want? Okay, well, we want fluid and fun combat. And what do I mean by fluid combat? Well, I want responsive controls and also fun encounters. Fancy magic effects. So it's a fantasy game, and I want to have like cool magic, you know, like fireballs and that kind of stuff, and lightning bolts and.
Lightning bolt! Lightning bolt! Lightning bolt!
Sleep!
Lightning bolt! Lightning bolt!
Sleep!
Lightning bolt! Sleep!
Fun fantasy trope magic. That'd be really cool to have. NPC interactions. I'm going to put this limited in brackets because I don't want to have to write too much of a script and record too much dialogue. And, you know, the more NPCs and the more people and stuff you add to the world and flesh things out, the more you're going to have to do.
I used to be an adventurer like you. Then I took an arrow in the knee.
So I'm going to keep that fairly limited. And what I might do is I might just have the story like pretty linear and have the actual gameplay itself just be the more open-ended thing where you can actually go around and like do dungeons and stuff. And maybe we'll have some randomly generated stuff. So I want to have dungeons with multiple levels. Pretty self-explanatory. Have dungeons that you can explore and, you know, have multi-levels to it. So maybe there's a boss room at some point. I could see that happening. That'd be kind of cool. Caves and other natural features to explore. So that's pretty self-explanatory. I mean, you want to have things to explore in the world and secrets to find. That's a big one too. And game engine features. Okay, first and foremost, multi-platform. So I want to be able to run on multiple systems. Smooth 60 FPS gameplay. So this is a 2D engine, so we don't need to, you know, push the frame rates to anything crazy, but I would like to try and have this running at 60 frames a second at all times just to make things nice and smooth and keep it fluid. What else? What else do we want? I don't even know at this point, I don't think.
What would you say you do here?
How about a working game engine that doesn't suck? That's a big one.
I must confess, you have an astonishingly good idea there, Doctor.
Thank you, sir.
Oh, yeah, scripting language. That's actually a big one. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do for this yet, but I know there are a few options out there that are already pretty widely used for scripting. So I might look into some of those. I might write my own very basic one, but if I do that, that's gonna make things take a lot longer. So we'll see about that one. But for sure, we need a scripting language just because we need to be able to control features of the engine through scripting and through quest design. Fun AI behavior. I actually can't wait to start doing some AI coding because the last time I did any AI coding, I did like really super basic stuff, but even that was really exciting. It was a lot of fun. It's just really interesting to see stuff that you've written, interpreted, and then actually like almost like come alive when you're playing the game. So the stuff that I was doing before was not overly interesting in terms of behaviors and modeling and that stuff, but it was still kind of cool. And I feel like I'd be able to do a little bit of a better job at this point. So yeah, looking forward to doing that. Okay, so this is a super basic plan we have here, but I think this is good enough to get started. Okay, so a little aside. So while I just went over the game engine features, that list wasn't super extensive. And I wanted to actually make a more in-depth list of what I actually need to code for the engine itself. So I made a little list here, and I'm going to just quickly take you through that, and then we'll get to some code. So ideally what we need is a basic file load/save system, and we need to define, or I need to define our file structures and what kind of file types the engine will accept and what kind of file types it will produce. Some user-defined tile palettes. So right now, any tile that's being loaded into the game editor is being loaded via the code. So it's all hard coded. And I'd like to change that so that you can eventually you'll be able to just open your own tiles and use whatever kind of graphics that you want. So you can basically mod and make your own stuff. It'll help me as well when I'm making maps later on. We need a tile rendering function or system that layers and properly sorts our tiles based on character positions and NPC positions and so on. Right now it's just strictly a layer system, so I need to rework that a little bit, but the foundation is there. We need a basic particle system, something just super simple that will be able to do like basic kind of magic effects and maybe make some fire, and hopefully it will link into the next thing, which is a dynamic lighting system. Right now the lighting system I have is pretty static and it's not very good. So ideally we'd like to rework that and make something a little bit more dynamic and something that has a little bit more flair. We need some basic audio processing and playback functionality, because right now there's none. And I haven't really looked into that yet in terms of what SDL is capable of, but I think I'll probably have to use an outside library or tool set for that. A map editor with scripting ability for quests. Obviously, the last video I showed you, I have a map editor that works or is working. So that's already on the go and will only get better with time. And something that has, the engine should have like simple AI routines and behaviors. Now this is a little bit less of a strict engine feature and more almost of a scripting feature, but I'm not sure how I'm going to implement it yet, so I'm going to keep it under this this heading right now. UI elements. So I'd like to write a library that has basic UI functionality. That's, you know, sliders, drop-down menus, that stuff. Right now I'm using an open source system for that, or an open source library, and I like it, but it's a little bit convoluted to use, so I'd like to maybe try and make something a little bit simpler for myself. And finally, game controller support. I really want to be able to play this with a controller. I would love to be able to play the whole thing with a controller, so supporting game controllers is like a top priority for me. Now a quick word from our sponsors. Iceberg lettuce. It's like chewing a cup of water. Thanks to our sponsors. Without their support, we couldn't do these videos, and this video series wouldn't be possible. So be sure to support them and use my promo code for 10% off. So the last time I took you guys through kind of a brief overview of what I had, and in the meantime, what do we have to? Oh, let's fix a few things first. So I think what we'll do is I'm going to come over here to our graphics area, and I have since renamed some of these functions, but we're going to work on fixing our lighting function here and figure out why it's not working. So let's run this first and we'll see what's going on here and see if we can figure out what the issue is. So as a brief refresher here, the way I do lighting is when you put the light in the world, it creates a custom texture that's just a radial gradient. So it's basically just a circle, and we just apply that circle to the world if lighting is enabled with a blend mode enabled. So it should, in theory, be brighter in the center and then fall off towards the edges as a real light would. Let's open up our file here called need new names. Okay, oh, looks like we have a light here. All right, well, you know what, let's put another one in here. Enable lighting. Okay, so that's a bit of an issue. So you can see the light here. It should be like pasted or stuck to the center point where that little move cursor or move icon is, but it is not. So let's figure out what is going on in the actual editor. So when I move, this actually moves with it. So it's updating. It looks like it's updating correctly with the camera offset and the movement. But there's just something else that's going wrong here. All right, let's figure this out. All right, so if we come back to our function here, so we're setting our render target here, which is our light modulator, which is, so when you set a render target, you're setting a spot to draw to. So you're telling the renderer, I want to draw to this location. And in this case, it's a texture that we're drawing to. I believe it's a texture. Let me just double check this. Light modulator. Yeah, it's a texture. Okay. So we set our current drawing, or point the renderer to the texture we want to draw into. We clear that, and so here's the actually where the lighting comes into play. So when we set the draw color here, it's just a gray value. So it's slightly above black. And if you see here, these 50, 50, and 50, these three numbers, that's your RGB value. So the max you can have is 255, 255, and 255. And that would be pure white. And so 0 would be pure black. And so 50 is obviously a shade of gray. So we set that texture to that shade of gray. Make sure we clear the renderer just in case. And then we are setting our destination rectangle up here. Okay, then we set the blend mode here. I'm not sure why I'm setting the destination rectangles right here. So you'll see this a lot in the code, and it's everywhere because the way that we draw stuff to the screen is with rectangles. So you define a spot in your frame buffer, and you draw to that rectangle. So like if it's a user interface element like a button, you specify where on the screen or in the frame buffer it is, how big it is, its X and Y value, and its width and height, and then you draw that item to the frame buffer, and then the frame buffer gets drawn to the screen. So in that sense, you layer stuff into your buffer, and so in that way you can play with different kinds of blending. So you can blend different layers together, and that's actually what we're doing here. So we're using a rectangle that is the size of our entire view, like our entire screen, and we're putting that over top of everything. So after we've drawn all of our tiles and our world objects and stuff, what I'll do is I'll draw another rectangle that covers the entire screen, and we'll just fill that in with a gray color. So it'll make everything a lot darker, and we'll change the blend mode so it's not just a solid color, so the opacity is different. So everything gets pulled down in terms of brightness. I fill the entire like lighting texture with that gray color, and then we draw the lights on top of it. So there will be little pinpricks of light drawn into this rectangle, and then we draw that rectangle onto the actual screen. But okay, so I'm not sure why I'm setting this rectangle right here, because we're just resetting it down here. We're not using it, so I think this might be the actual issue. So let's get rid of that because we don't need that yet. Yeah, so down here is where we want to actually, this is where we actually draw that light texture to the screen. The reason that we change the render target to that lighting texture is because I don't want to draw to our frame buffer yet. I want to draw our lights into this, I guess you can call it almost a lighting buffer, before I draw that to our main frame buffer. So let's run this. We'll just open a random thing here. Okay, so let's add a light. Turn on the lighting first. Voila. Okay, yeah, so that was the issue. So if you look here, this currently is our screen size, this little small rectangle of where we're doing our edits. So that is our screen size for the time being. And so we're drawing this dark gray over top of everything, and then we're drawing this light colors, or this gradient, the radial gradient here of this light, onto this gray texture. We're basically like subtracting it from it. And then we're drawing that whole texture back to the screen to create this kind of lighting effect. And can we... Oh, yeah, there we go. We can make it bigger too. All right, sweet. So that works great. Can I make more lights? Uh-oh. Okay, that's weird. So this doesn't work perfectly. There's still some issues with this. I'm not entirely sure why. I think it might have to do with the code that actually runs the creation of the lights. See, that is weird. I don't know why that's happening there. Ah, so many problems, so much work to do. Interesting. Okay, so for some reason these lights are not appearing, but I'm able to add them. If you can see on the right here, the number of lights is going up every time I click, but there's no lights in the actual scene, which is kind of annoying. That's weird. Oh, more stuff to fix. Not even fix, more stuff just to get right the first time, which clearly I have not. The irony is I had a lot of this stuff working months ago, and I changed a few things in the interest of making them better, and now they don't work. All right, so I'm going to just hold off on completely tearing apart the lighting system right now and reworking it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to work on the collision detection and the character movement, because those are two things that we definitely need before we can start actually quote-unquote playing the game, and also adding other things like monsters and NPCs and stuff. Once we have the collision detection in some kind of working state, then I can go back and we'll fix the lighting, and I might do like a complete rewrite of it. There's a couple techniques I want to try out that I think might just be better, but we'll see. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe. And remember, like one of those email chains from the early 2000s, if you don't send this to 5 or more people, your house will explode. So I would get on that. All right. See you guys next week.